Hello all, good evening. Welcome to Quantifiers. So, as we all know that yesterday Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented her sixth budget on February 1, that was yesterday. So, this was an interim budget ahead of the general elections later this year, so will be applicable till March 2024. The interim budget 2024, I would say, was focused more on youth and a women empowerment while maintaining the fiscal consolidation and continuing the capex. Now, FM Raman also lowered down the financial year 25 fiscal deficit target to 5.51% of the GDP, but there were no changes which were made to the direct tax and the indirect tax rates. So this is just a brief description. So let's understand this particular budget in more detail. So as I told earlier that this particular budget, the main focus was on the four pillars, I would say. So the four pillars where this particular budget was focused was on Garib. So the first, I would say, it was meant for Garib and the schemes for Garib. Then the another target or the another pillar was the Yuva category, the youth. The third they want to focus is on Mahila, which was the women empowerment and the schemes for the women. And then fourth pillar, I would say, where the budget actually focus was on Kisan. Okay. So other than that, they also introduced, what I really appreciate, I like at that point of a time. So what she said in that, so they say that GDP, which is a gross domestic product. So besides the gross domestic product, it also focuses on the government, development, and the performance. So this was basically the main overview of the budget. So focus on Garib, Yuva, Mahila, and Kisan. And yes, it includes the terminology such as governance, development, and the performance. So let's just have a quick review and a look at whatever the things that were being presented in the interim budget 2024. Okay. So India's GDP milestones. So they have the Nirmala Sitharaman actually said that what is the plan is that India will become a $7 trillion economy by 2030 in an aspirational target. So India's GDP, so what are their expectation is close by to 7%, okay? $7 trillion, that is they are expecting. So the India's GDP growth rate right now is a 7%, and that is what they are actually expecting, okay? So they maintain this particular thing that it was one dollar trillion in the year 2007 and 8, and then 2 and then 3. Then this is their expectation that by the year 2026 and 27 it will be a $5 trillion economy, and then later on the target is to a $7 trillion economy by the year 2030. Let's get into the next aspect. Let me clear the drawings here. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so the budget speech actually initiated with their showing whatever the NDA government has done. So NDA 1 and NDA 2. So Indian economy has witnessed profound transformation in the last 10 years. So in 2014, the country was facing enormous challenges. So the government overcame those challenges and undertook structural reforms. Pro-people reforms were undertaken for the conditions for the jobs and entrepreneurship. Fruits of development started reaching people at scale. Country got a sense of new purpose and home. So that was just a brief introduction of whatever they have done during their tenure of ruling, because this year we have the election. Now, in the second term, the government strengthened its mantra and our development philosophy, which includes the inclusivity, basically both the social inclusion as well as the geographical inclusion. They also talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, that the entire nation approached this thing with a full support, and also with a whole of nation approach, the country overcame challenges of COVID-19 pandemic, taking long strides towards Nirbhar Bharat and Amrit Kal. So I'm going to talk about the Amrit Kal in detail because that was being one of the highlighting feature of the budget 2024. So let's get into the next. So over the past 10 years, 25 crores people came out of multidimensional poverty. So they were just telling whatever they have done. So the government saved rupees 2.7 lakh crores by preventing leakages to direct benefit transfers. That is to Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Now, under the government's electronic national agriculture market, which is known as NAM and APMCs, have been integrated, benefiting 1.8 crore farmers and accounting. So they were just boosting off whatever their achievements that they have done during their 10 years of governance. Okay. Now, the one striking feature which the budget actually represented was that they say that the average real income of the citizen increased by the 50%. So investments are robust, the economy is doing well, and the people are living better and earning better. So average real income have increased by 50%. Inflation is moderate, she says. Okay. I look at this particular figure. So what was the per capita income in the year 2013 and 14 was 68,572, which has definitely increased to 98,374. So in case if we see the increase, so it is close by to 43.5%, which was actually quoted as a 50% by them. So, but yes, what we need to know is that the average real income, that is the per capita income, is actually increased by a substantial percentage. So that was one achievement that they have highlighted in the budget. Okay. Then there was this particular graph which was being depicted, which was being shown by the Nirmala Sitharaman. So you can see here that the India dollar GDP growth rate is actually much more than the world dollar GDP growth rate. And that is a good sign. Okay. That is India is actually growing, and that's why we are targeting that from the fifth largest economy, will gonna soon become the third largest economy. So that was one striking feature that Nirmala Sitharaman portrayed on the budget day. The next up is the development mantra. Okay. So they say that the main idea was that they are planning for a Viksit Bharat by 2047. Okay. So what is the vision is that prosperous Bharat in harmony with nature, modern infrastructure, and opportunities for all. So what is the development mantra for the Viksit Bharat is that Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So what does it mean is that comprehensive development of all. Okay, so that the poor, the women, the yuva, everything comes into the picture. So it's the holistic development that actually takes place. The next they say is that Sabka Saath, Sabka Viswas, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas. Okay, so the trust that they were saying is one of the important. So they also talk about the Trinity. So Trinity is the three things. So demography. So again, it's the youth. So when India is in a comfortable position nowadays, because you've got a demographic dividend, and the demographic dividend is that the population who are in a young age. So we have a more of those people who are in their young age rather than the people who are dependent. Okay. So that is the benefits of a democracy, okay, of the people, by the people, and for the people. And of course, the diversity backed by Sabka Prayas. So everybody try for it. Okay. So Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Vishwas, and Sabka Prayas. So by all these skills, they believe that by the year 2047, we can actually aim for being a developing country to a developed country. That is Viksit Bharat by 2047. So that was one of the claims that was being made here. Okay, let's see. Yeah. So other than that, yeah, see, other than altering the GDP, not altering, rather than she was saying that besides GDP, gross domestic product, the GDP also focuses on the government development and the performance. She also come up with one thing that for the factors of production. So for all the economic students, I hope now you know what are the factors of the production. So factors of production are which are required for the production. So four factors of production generally taught in the economics are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur, the skills. Okay. So they say that other than these four factors of the production, at this point of the time, keeping the contemporary India into the consideration, the another factors of the production should be digital public infrastructure. Okay. So all your digital payments, your Aadhaar, UPI, okay, should be added as a new factor of production. Okay. Then, of course, they talk about the digital India and all that. So this combined with social and physical infrastructure is aiding progress. So they say that this is the need of the hour, and they talk about the digital India transformation also. Okay. So yeah, so as I told you that the budget, the one of the major important pillar that they focus was on Kisan, and they talk about the scheme for the welfare of the farmers or the Kisan, which is Annadata. So in Annadata, they say that direct financial assistance to 11.8 crore farmers under PM Kisan Yojana. So what is this PM Kisan Yojana is that you can actually take a loan of 6,000 or something. So 2,000 dispersed every quarter. So that is the case. Now crop insurance to the 4 crore farmers under PM Fasal Bima Yojana. Integration of 1361 mandis under E-NAM. So NAM we already discussed before also. supporting trading volume of 3 lakh crore. So they were just talking about whatever has been done for the upliftment or the welfare of the farmers. Okay. So that is the direct financial assistance under the PM Kisan, then PM Fasal Bima Yojana, and then integration of NAMs. Okay. They also talk about the increasing procurement of the wheat and rice, so which has increased from the year 2020-21. So it was 30, now it has increased to 38, and there was a dip also. Okay. Then the wheat procurement, they say that it has slightly declined. So it was 390, 433, 188, and which is now again from 188, it is increased to 262. Okay. So that was, they talk about the farmers and the Annadata. Now, the next is they talk about the Skill India mission. So, Skill India mission. So, the next pillar was youth, Yuva. Okay. So, the Skill India mission has trained 1.4 crore youth, upskilled and reskilled 54 lakh youths, and established 3,000 new ITIs. Okay. A large number of institutional higher learning, namely, so this is basically, we can look at this particular graph and this will be clear. So, they say that the year the IIT's number were 2016, which has actually increased to the 23. The AIMS were 7, which has increased to 22. The universities were 723, which has increased to 1113. So they're saying that yes, the Yuva, because India is boosting for the demographic dividend they have, the young population. So the Skill India mission, which is there to empower the youth in that case. And for that, they are establishing the universities, the colleges, and the medical institutes and all that. Okay. The third pillar was, of course, the Nari Shakti, the Mahila that they were saying, right? So Mahila, they talk about the female enrollment in higher education is up by 28% in 10 years, okay? So we know in a country like India, the females, the women, the girls' education, there's a lot of issues there with this particular segment, okay? But yes, the picture is bright, okay, and the numbers are increasing. So female enrollment in higher education up 28% in 10 years in STEM courses. So STEM courses are basically your technical courses like engineering, maths, and other, okay? Girls and women make 43% of the enrollment, one of the highest in the world, okay? So all these steps are reflected in increasing participation of women in the workforce. So equal amount of the opportunities at the corporate level or the government position level also. So making triple talaq illegal, reservation of 1/3 seats for women in parliament and state assemblies, over 70% houses under PM Awas Yojana to women have increased their dignity. Sitaraman highlights. Okay. So yes, so they so far we have discussed Kisan, we have discussed Yuva, and for Mahila, this was her statement or the highlighting feature in that category. Okay. So yeah, the next they talk about the innovation. So they say that the innovation is the need of the hour. So they say that a corpus of 1 lakh crore has been kept aside for the long-term interest-free loans, and this interest-free loans will be specifically given to boost the innovation. Okay. So this will encourage the private sector to, of course, for research and the development and the innovation. Okay. There will be an impetus for deep tech startups working in the defense sector. So yes, defense sector was one of the highlighting prominent feature of the budget. So they say that we have got kept a corpus, okay, for the tech startups in case if they are specifically doing it for the defense sector. So that was for the innovation that she highlight. Then she talks about the interest-free loans to the states. So the government, the central government always gives loans and the other things or grants to the governments of the other states and the union territories. So many growth and development enabling reforms are needed in the state for realizing the vision of Viksit Bharat. Okay, so Viksit, when we say Viksit Bharat, so Sabka Saath, Sabka Prayas. Okay, so Sabka like good for everybody. Okay, so that is the case that we all grow together. Sabka Vikas. Okay, so I was missing on that term. So that is the case. Yeah. So for Sabka Vikas, so they say that it's not only by the central government when the motto is a Viksit Bharat. So every state and a UT in a country should actually grow and develop. Okay, and to do that, they are saying that many growth and development enabling reforms are needed for the Viksit Bharat, and a provision of 75,000 crores as a 50-year interest-free loan is proposed this year to support this particular milestone, that is by developed India by the year 2047. see the next thing that they have. Okay, so they also, Nirmala Sitharaman also talk about the Mudra loans. So they are saying that FM Nirmala Sitharaman says 43 crore loans aggregating to 22.5 lakh crores given under the PM Mudra Yojana. So that is the case. The finance minister said that direct benefit transfers of 34 lakh crore through Jan accounts have resulted in savings. It also says that 30 crore Mudra Yojana loans have been given to women in the last 10 years. Okay, so that is the case here. Mudra loans is basically given to the women so that they can actually start up with their own entrepreneur or some business that they want to start into. Okay, then the finance minister, the focus was on the infrastructure, and then she talked about the new corridors. So announced the 3 new corridors of the railways. That is, one is energy, mineral and cement corridor, that is connecting the states which has all the 3 elements in it. Okay, or one of the 3 elements. So we connect energy, mineral and a cement corridor. The second is the port connectivity corridor. So wherever the states which has the coastal areas and the ports, so connecting all the ports together. The third corridor that they have announced is a high traffic density corridor. So wherever there is a high traffic, so some easy way, so that the time can be, so the traffic can be diverted, I would say in that case. So the 3 corridors were basically being introduced or announced by the finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Okay, she also talked about Vande Bharat. So now Vande Bharat is in the news long time. So they say that the 40,000 bogies would be converted to Vande Bharat standard to improve safety and convenience for passengers. So this was for the railway segment that she spoke about in the budget. So strategy for the Amrit Kal. Now, this was actually the key striking feature of the budget. So before we get into what are the strategy for the Amrit Kal, let's understand what this Amrit Kal is. So Narendra Modi actually used this particular terminology for the first time in the year 2021 on the occasion of 75th Independence Day. That was on the 15th August 2021. That actually marked the 75th Independence Day of India. And so Narendra Modi basically introduced this terminology of Amrit Kal. So basically, what does this Amrit Kal is signifies? It's a golden hour, you can say. So it signifies the 25 years between. So on 15th August 2021, it was the 75th Independence Day. So they say from 75th Independence Day to the 100th Independence Day, there will be in between that there are 25 years. Okay, so these 25 years is basically marked as Amrit Kal. So they say that India aims to significantly improve the standard of living of its citizen in the next 25 years. So this 25 years is actually termed as Amrit Kal, and for that she's talked about how we can achieve that particular Amrit Kal and what are the strategies for it. So one of the strategies, so there were the 5 strategies which was being listed by her, out of which the one strategy was infrastructure and investment. Okay, so we talked about infrastructure. So we talked about that the finance minister has talked about implementation of 3 major railway corridors program, the previous slide that we talked about, under PM Gati Shakti to improve logistic efficiencies and reduce cost. Okay, they also talked about promotion of foreign investments via bilateral investment or treaties to be negotiated, expansion of existing airports and comprehensive development of new airports under the Udan scheme, promotion of urban transformation via metro rail and Namo Bharat. So Namo Bharat is basically, you can say, it's a kind of a train that plies between Delhi and Metro Delhi and Meerut, I think so. Just check it once. Okay, so that is the case. Okay, so that was one case. So they say that we can achieve Amrit Kal by making the investments in the infrastructure segment and by getting the foreign investments into the India, into picture, or getting it into the India. Okay. Then she talked about increase in a capital expenditure, doubling of FDI's inflow. So foreign direct investment. So she says that it has actually, the inflow has increased, which is a good sign. Okay, so it was 298 USD billion, which has increased to 596 billion. Then increase in a capital expenditure. So I hope you know what is capital expenditure. So whenever there is no doubt there is an expenditure, but whenever there is an increase in this is also known as capex. Okay, the one of the highlighting feature of the budget was this increase in a capital expenditure. So capital expenditure are basically an expenditure which is made to develop long-term economic assets. Okay, so this is an investment which is going to boost the company. Okay, boost the performance of the country. It will gonna boost. It will gonna, let's say, accelerate the growth of country. So increase in capital expenditure is always a good sign. It's not a bad sign. No doubt it's an expenditure, but whenever there is an capital expenditure, so that means that the expenses are being done to improve the long-term economic assets. For example, you can say investment on infrastructure, let's say setting up of schools, colleges, bridges, roads, airports, etc. Okay, defense may you can say that the capital expenditure could be a purchasing of a fighter jet. Okay, so something, or maybe tank for the army. So that is the case. So this is a good sign. So it is budget estimate was close by to, you can say, approximately 10 lakh crore. Okay, which is now being increased to more than that. So whatever this is, I mean, like you can figure out from the gap. Okay, so improvement in the physical infrastructure. So they talk about this particular thing, that national highways have increased, the cargo traffic from the major ports have increased, electrified rail routes have increased, aircraft movement has increased, number of airports have almost been doubled. Okay, so that is the case. So for Amrit Kal, one of the things that you need is the development in the infrastructure and investment. Okay, so that is they highlighted. Now, the second strategy for the Amrit Kal they talked about is a sustainable development. So they talk about commitment to meet net zero by 2070. Now, what is this net zero? Is that that is no extra carbon dioxide will be released. Okay, so whatever we as a humans will gonna release, so it's okay. But they say that it is the commitment is that by the year 2070, there will be no extra carbon dioxide will be released. So whatever is there which we cannot actually avoid, so that will be there. But other than that, no other carbon dioxide will be produced. So that is this sustainable development. They say that the one goal for the sustainable development is to commitment to meet net zero by 2070. So viability gap funding for wind energy, setting up of coal gasification and liquefaction capacity, mandatory blending of CNG, PNG, and compressed biogas, and financial assistance for the biomass. Okay. They also talk about the rooftop solarization, that 1 crore households will be enabled to obtain up to 3 units of electricity free per month because of the rooftop solarization. They also talk about electronic buses for the public transport network, strengthening e-vehicle ecosystem by supporting manufacturing and charging, and a new scheme for biomanufacturing and biofoundry. Okay. So they talk about that the non-fossil installed electricity capacity is also increased, which is again a good sign. Okay. So 30.4, which has increased to 43.9. Okay. Then they say that more than 10 crore LPG connections under the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, 36.9 crores LED bulb, LED tube lights under the Ujala schemes, then 1.3 crore LED street lights under the SNLP. So SNLP is your Street Lighting National Program. So that is the case. So this is about the sustainable development, where we also focus on the environment and the green energy and the electronic energy and the non-renewable, non-fossil fuels, etc. Okay. The third in the case of the strategy for the Amrit Kal, they say, is the inclusive development. Okay. So aspirational district programs to assist states in faster development, including employment generation. Okay. So that is the case, inclusive development, Sabka Vikas. Okay. So they mention about the health here. So encourage cervical cancer vaccination for the girls 9 to 14 years. Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan to be expedited for improving nutrition delivery, early childhood care and development, UN platform for immunization efforts of Mission Indradhanush to be rolled out. Okay. And health cover under Ayushman Bharat scheme to be expanded to all Asha Anganwadi workers. Okay. So earlier it was just meant for a poor section of the society. Now it has been also extended to the Asha Anganwadi workers and your helpers in that case. Okay. So that is, so UN is basically for the newly born platform for the immunization effort, so that whatever the vaccines a newly born baby needs to have, so it is done in a manner. Okay. And then they talk about Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana. So earlier it was just 1737. which has increased to 13,195. So the third pillar of strategy for the Amrit Kal, they say, is the inclusive development, where they focus on the health sector, the women to a certain extent, the child care and everything was being covered in that case scenario. Now, the strategy for the Amrit Kal, again, is the inclusive development. So this was 1/2 and this is 2/2. So when we talk about the inclusive development, other than the health, the another two parameters that they talk about is the housing. So housing is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, close to achieving target of 3 crore houses, additional 2 crore targeted for the next 5 years. Housing for middle class scheme to be launched to promote middle class to buy or build their own houses, that is coming up with the schemes and all that. So under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, earlier there were 79,590 crores, which has increased to 80,671. They also talk about tourism. So you have seen that the one such step was being taken by the Modi government was the Lakshadweep. Okay, so states will be encouraged to undertake development of iconic tourist centers to attract business. Long-term interest-free loans to be provided to states to encourage development. G20 meeting in 60 places presented diversity of India. So that happened here in India this time. So projects for port connectivity, tourism and amenities will be taken up in islands. The Lakshadweep is the one example that we have right now. Okay. The another and the last, they say that how they can do or achieve their Amrit Kal is, of course, with a focus on the agriculture and the farmers. So they talk about Annadata, we already discussed in the previous slides. So they say that the government will promote private and public investment in post-harvest activities, application of nano DAP. DAP is a kind of soluble material to be expended in agroclimatic zone, Atmanirbhar oilseed Abhiyan strategy to formulate it for achieve Atmanirbhar for Atmanirbharta for oil seeds. Okay, comprehensive program for dairy development. They will also talk about the fishery. So Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. So for almost every agricultural, food processing and the allied activities. Okay, so they talk about it. So they say, so I hope now you know what this Amrit Kal is. Okay, I'm saying Akal Bharat. So Amrit Kal is, and then all the strategies that they can achieve. Okay, so this was some of the numbers and the facts that was being shared by the government. So declining current account deficit as a percentage of GDP. So let's understand what is this current account deficit is basically. So it is a measurement of countries' trade where the you can say a value of goods and services it imports. So it imports exceeds the value of the products and the services it exports. Okay, so in a very simple manner, current account deficit is import when the import are more than exports. Okay, so what they say is that it is the CAT is actually declining. Okay, so it was financial year 18 and 19, it was closed by 2.3% of the GDP, which is now decreased somewhat to, this is the financial year 24, but for the financial year 23, it has decreased somewhere here. Okay, so that is the case. So current account deficit decreasing, it should decrease. Okay, so that is the case. Then they also talks about declining unemployment rate. Now this particular government is being targeted every time because of the unemployment rate, but this is what the fact that is being presented by them, that it was 6.1%, which is actually dipped down to 3.2%. Okay, then raising volumes of the digital transactions. So you know that the factors of the production, she said that one of the factors of the production should be the digitalization. So the rising volumes of the digital transactions is a good sign, because that means that the country as a whole is progressing. See some of the other factors. So rise in average monthly gross GST collections. So they say that earlier it was just financial year, it was 0.9, which has increased to 1.7 lakhs crore. Okay, fall in headline inflation. So again, this is being targeted for the inflation, GST and all that. So that was fact. So it was inflation in the year financial was closed by to 9.4%, which has now decreased to like this is estimation. So which is now closed by to decrease to 6.7. Okay. Yeah. So that is the case. So some of the facts that they were given. So maybe they're not gonna ask you in your interview. Maybe they cannot ask you, but you should know about them. Okay. Then the government actually talks about the revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. Now let's understand first of all what are the revenue receipts and what are the revenue expenditure. So you remember I talked about capital expenditure. So capital expenditure is an expenses made to develop long-term economic assets. Now, revenue receipts are basically, you can say, are the income of the government, which is basically related to day-to-day operations of government. So whatever the income the government receives from, let's say, taxes, okay, fines, or the fees that they impose, okay, stamp duty, challan. So that is basically a revenue receipt. So the income that the government receives because of the day-to-day operations of the government. So that is the case here. So this was a budget estimate in the year 2023-24, and the revised estimate is 27. So that's the case. So revenue receipts is actually increasing. And in case if you see the revenue expenditure, now revenue expenditure is basically the you can say an expenses that are being done by the government, which does not result in creation of any assets. Okay, so it does not do anything. So current, in case if I talk about your capital expenditure, so it actually leads to the creation of the assets, but the revenue expenditure, it does not lead to the creation of the assets. It is just related to expenses that do not result in the creation of any assets for the Indian government. Maybe you can say, let's say, interest payments on loan. So it is just an expenditure. It does not create any kind of the infrastructure in the country. The loans that this government has taken, they are paying it, the principal amount, the subsidies, the grants to the states and the government. So that is the case. So that is the revenue expenditure, and the revenue deficit is basically a difference between a revenue expenditure minus a revenue receipts. Okay. So that is 36.5, and this is estimated to be 30. So 6.5, which is still a bearable, okay, not too much, not too widen for that matter, right? So that is the case. Let's see. Now the capital receipts. So the one good picture, of course, is of course the effective capital expenditure. So capital expenditure, the budget estimation is 15.7. So whenever there is a capital expenditure that is happening, so that means that there is a creation of the assets that is actually going on. Okay. Now capital receipts are basically related to the capital transactions of the government. For example, in case if the government sells some sort of assets, they borrow. Okay. Or so that is the case. So these are the capital receipts. So again, your the capital expenditure is a good sign in an Indian economy. So that is increasing. So that was a good point, or the good thing that we can keep into consideration. Okay. Now fiscal deficit, basically fiscal deficit, you can say, is that difference between the total revenue and total expenditure. Okay. So total expenditure minus total revenue, I'll write it here. Total expenditure minus total revenue, that actually gives you the picture of the fiscal deficit. Okay. So it is an indication of, you can say, kind of the total borrowings that is being done by the government. Okay. So fiscal deficit as low is beneficial. So for those who are interested, the revised estimate for financial year 24 fiscal deficit is 5.8%. Fiscal deficit is the gap between, which is expected to 5.1% of the GDP. Now, gross market borrowing for the financial year will be 14.3 lakh crore, less than the borrowing in the current financial year. So that is what they have revised this estimate, that the fiscal deficit will be close by to 5.8% of the GDP. Okay. So that's that little bit you should know. Okay. Now let's see the deficit trend. So these all lines, the blue is a fiscal deficit, R is a revenue deficit. So these two are main focus. So you can see that this is a good sign. Yeah. So one good sign was that your capex, your this capital expenditure, okay, that is increasing. The another good trend is, of course, your fiscal deficit is decreasing, your revenue deficit is decreasing. So it was at the peak during this time of 2019, 2021. That was the COVID year, right? So after that, the government is able to control the situations, and it is in a declining mode. So that is also a good sign of the country performance. Okay. So let's say, okay, so capital expenditure, so continuing its focus on infrastructure development, the interim budget 2024 has proposed to raise capital expenditure. So whenever there is a raise in a capital expenditure, so that means that there is a creation of the assets. So for the 4 consecutive years, by 11.1% to 11.11 crore, which is 3.4% of the GDP. So this is this 11.1111 figure, which is in a news right now. Okay. So capital expenditure for the 4th consecutive year by 11.1%. Okay. To 11.11 lakh crore, which is 3.4% of the GDP total expenditure will be done on your capital expenditure. So read about this 11.11 figure because there can be a question in your interviews based on it. So trend in a capital expenditure, in case if we talk about it, so grant and aid for the creation of capital assets, the capital expenditure and effective capital expenditure. So it's actually in an increasing mode. So increasing mode is a good for the growth of the country. Okay, let's see the next one. So allocation of the specific ministry. So in case if we, oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so in case if we see that the allocation, yes, of course, the one sector that has been emerged is of course your Ministry of Defense, that they have allocated the highest. Okay, then is your Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. That is the reason, no capex expenditure. Then they focus on the Ministry of Railways, Consumer Affairs, Ministry of Home Affairs. So this was the allocation. Just for your knowledge, again, you don't need to remember all this thing, but a little bit, that the maximum went to the Ministry of Defense. Okay, now allocation of major schemes by the government and how much of the money is being allocated. So for Manrega, the government has allocated, the budget estimate is 86,000 crore. For the Ayushman Bharat, it is 7,500 crore. Production linked scheme incentive 6,200 crore. Semiconductors and display manufacturing, this is solar power grid, they have increased national green hydrogen. So this is the budget allocation to the major schemes that the government have launched. Okay, keeping that their Amrit Kal into the consideration. Let's get into the few more slides. So text proposals. So there was, so text proposal, there was no much change in the text. I told you initially also. So certain tax benefits to the startups and investments made by sovereign wealth fund or pension funds. Tax exemption of some IFC units earlier expiring on 31/3/2024. Now it has been extended to 31/3/2025. And withdrawal of outstanding direct tax demand up to rupees 20,000 and up to 10,000 for the financial year 11 and 15. Okay. So that is the case. So there was for the tax, basically, in case if we, I have to tell you, so there was no major change in the tax regime. So for the direct and indirect taxes, including import duties, there is the retention of the same tax rates. The earlier it was like till the amount of 7 lakhs, there was no tax. Earlier to 5 lakh, which last year was being modified to 7 lakhs, that there is no tax, and it's remained, the tax slab remains the same. Okay. So for corporate taxes, 22% for the existing domestic companies and 15% of the tax will be charged for the new manufacturing companies. No tax liabilities for the taxpayers with income up to 7 lakhs. So there were no major changes. So whatever follows in the previous year, the same is applicable this year also. Okay. So this is the budget size. Yeah, budget size is how much of the money that they have for the budget total. So basically the budget size is this is just for the knowledge. They're not going to ask you much question. So budget size is basically determined by three things: the capital receipts, okay, the net tax receipts, and the non-tax revenue that the government will gonna have. So this is the budget size that they have come up with. So it will be 47.66, right? Let's get into it. So rupee comes from and rupee goes from. So this is just for your idea, basically, because there can be questions in an interview from that. So majorly the rupee comes from, the major source of income from the government is of course still the one that contributes the maximum is the borrowing and the other liabilities. The next is your income tax, which we pay. Okay. Then there is a corporate tax. So you don't need to remember all, you just remember three major things, that from where the government earns money. So major money chunks come from the borrowings and the liabilities, then from the income tax and the corporate tax. And the rupee goes to, so what is the major government expenditure? So the government major expenditure is on the, you can say, interest payments for the loans that they have borrowed. So they make the interest payments, and almost the same on the state shares of tax and duties. They have to give the grants to the state governments and the UTs. Okay. And then it's almost the same, like financial commission and other transfer. The central sector schemes. So the schemes that the government launched, Manrega and other schemes. Okay. Defense and that is the case. So you just need to know, so that in case if they ask you any questions in an interview, in a comfortable position to talk about it. So trend in income, trend in tax receipts. So basically, in case if I say that the tax receipts are increasing as a percentage of the GDP. So that's again a good sign. It wasn't a dip in the year. Again, it was a COVID time period. So there was a dip, which has again increased to 11.7%. That is the budget estimate. So this was the revised estimate, 11.6%, which is comparatively more than what happened in the GDP. So again, you can see that the major chunk of the government revenues come from the direct taxes. That is what we pay, okay? And then is your indirect tax. So indirect taxes, maybe you can say GST, where you don't pay, but you pay to the shopkeeper and the shopkeeper then pay it to the government. So that is the case too. This is what the trend in the tax receipt. But still, again, the tax, the maximum comes from the direct taxes, okay? Then total transfers to states and UTs. So this is just again another graph. So it is increase, yeah. So whatever, because they say, sabka vikas, okay. So where they takes the states and UTs also into the consideration, and a lot of times, I would say, major times where the government have to give them the grants, the loans for so that they can ensure the smooth functioning of the states and UTs. So that has increased, okay. So with this note, we are almost done with our presentation on budget. I hope you had some immense learning from this session, okay. And wherever you feel you still have a doubt, please ping us. We'll be free, we'll be very happy to help you out. And all the best for your exams. Stay safe, work hard, and yes, get into the minute details of everything. Okay. All the best for your paper. Thank you.